Well, I'm so happy for you because I know that for a long time you were out there on your own with a lot of these theories.
Very much so, and also subjected to the most blistering and deeply unpleasant criticism from the archaeological fraternity and from their friends in the media. Like, how dare this journalist propose that history might be different, or that we might have a forgotten chapter in the human story? It was regarded almost as offensive that I would put this material out there, and archaeologists felt it was their responsibility to show the public that I was full of shit, and that was the whole way my work was greeted, and to a certain extent still is greeted by archaeologists. But things have changed. Central to my work was the notion of a global cataclysm, roughly 12,500, 12,800 years ago. It made sense to me in 1995 when I wrote Fingerprints of the Gods, but there was no compelling evidence for a global cataclysm then. All the evidence seemed to point to that time and a massive global event. And then from 2007 onwards, more than a decade after I wrote Fingerprints of the Gods, we get a group of more than 60 major scientists who are seriously proposing that the Earth was hit by multiple fragments of a giant comet 12,800 years ago, and that this caused a huge rise in sea level and extinctions of megafaunas. They are not saying that it also wiped out a lost advanced civilization of prehistory. I'm saying that.
Yes.
But what has changed is that we now have compelling, hard scientific evidence. I'm not saying every scientist accepts it. It's the nature of science to dispute findings. But we have a group of 60 major figures who have seriously proposed this in all the leading mainstream journals. And it's changed the balance of power in this argument. Because one thing that they used to say is Hancock can't be right because there was no global cataclysm, 12 or 13,000 years ago. Well, now we know there was, and there are various explanations for it. So that's moved things along. And the other thing that's changed a lot is the attitude of the man in the street to authority. That has changed. Back in the 90s, authority figures were the gatekeepers. They controlled everything. If an authority figure in a discipline like archaeology said, Hancock is completely wrong, he's made all this stuff up, that would generally be believed, not by everybody, but by the majority of people. Today, to have a mainstream authority figure say that to me is actually an advantage, because people are so distrustful of authority, and rightly so, because we've been lied to by authority figures in all fields for so long. The bullshit has been so enormous that people are finally waking up, and we can't trust what authority figures say. And
I think we can thank the internet for that.
We can thank the internet for that. Yeah,
I'm sure you've seen the more recent evidence of a crater that they just discovered, like fairly recently.
Greenland.
Yes, enormous crater.
It's an enormous crater. It's 18 miles wide. It had not been discovered before because it's under ice. It's under a lot of ice. At the end of the Ice Age, Greenland was one area which never lost its ice cover completely, whereas North America, everywhere north of Minnesota, was covered in ice a mile, sometimes 2 miles deep. Europe, the same, Northern Europe. But Greenland kept its ice, whereas the other parts of the world lost their ice at the end of the Ice Age. And what's interesting about Greenland is there's already evidence of comet impact in Greenland, which goes back to papers published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences in 2013, that they found what are called impact proxies in Greenland. In other words, nanodiamonds, carbon spherules, and evidence of a lot of platinum and iron was found in a layer in the ice dated to 12,800 years ago. But the next development, and you're absolutely right, and this was just a few months ago, was the discovery of this humongous crater in Greenland and evidence that it was caused by an iron impactor of some kind. Now, dating of it, I would be irresponsible to say that crater definitely dates to 12,800 years ago, because the work has not been done to prove that yet. But what I can say, and what the specialists who have explored and excavated the crater are saying, is that it's recent. They can say for sure that it happened during the last ice age. Under the crater, is nothing but massively disturbed and destroyed and completely wrecked ice from the ice age, from the Pleistocene. Above it is smooth, perfect ice from our epoch, which is called the Holocene, which began about 11,600 years ago. So all the evidence suggests that this crater dates to that period between 12,800 and 11,600 years ago. But to absolutely confirm that, more work needs to be done. But